Hi, good evening, everyone. I suppose the first thing that I should say is Happy New Year. It has been since last year that I've seen all of you, and it's nice to see you again. Another thing that I would like to say is thank you. The response that I get from these videos, very fulfilling. I really appreciate it because whenever people comment, whenever people like, whenever people sometimes even talk to me like outside in the real world and they tell me about how a particular video affected them and they want to talk about that particular topic more, I really appreciate that me having these conversations and me talking about this type of stuff out loud is impactful and that it helps. Because at the end of the day, this is supposed to show how you're not alone. It shows me that I'm not alone. It's amazing how we have so many different shared experiences, but we don't realize it because we keep so much on the inside. So, the next thing that I like to say before I get into the topic at hand is that when it comes to all the comments, keep them coming. I love them, but I'll respond to them at the very end once everything is done so I don't interrupt like my thought process. So, I'm pretty sure that you saw the title, and that's the reason why you're here. The 26-year-old virgin. Yep, that's me. And how the hell do you make it to 26 years old and you're still a virgin? So here's thing number one if we're going to get into technicalities. I'm a virgin from like the neck down. I feel like, and that didn't happen until I was like 19 years old. And it's so funny because I think of like virgin from the neck down. That sounds like a really expensive perfume that's exclusively at Macy's. Like Virgin from the Neck Down by Samuel Jones, exclusively at Macy's. but it's really interesting. It's a complex story how I made it to this point, and I want to talk to you guys about this because there are certain aspects as to how I've made such a decision for this long that comes together and plays into all of this that really needs to be talked about. So, thing number one, when it comes to how sexuality was like introduced to me, right? The way sexuality was introduced to me was actually kind of traumatic. And it wasn't until I got older and older and older that I started to realize what type of effect that had on me. Essentially, I would be babysitted by a friend of the family, right? And I wouldn't ever be by myself. There would be another girl who was a member of that friend of the family's family who would also be there. And she was a couple of years older than me, right? I was probably like 5 or 6. But what would happen is that when no one was around and all of the adults seemed to be gone, she would coach me through sexual acts. And it's really interesting looking back on it because it's like I knew what I was doing was wrong by going along with what she was asking me and telling me to do. But the reason why I knew it was wrong is because she was so jumpy and she seemed so secretive about it. Like whenever someone would come into the house, or when like the adults would start to show up, right? She'll pull her underwear back up and she'll throw her clothes back on. I'm like, oh my gosh, what's going on? Like, what we're doing must be wrong, right? And I would think that, everything was fine. Apparently, we were getting away with what it is that we're doing, but apparently not. Because what ended up happening was that the adults found out. I don't know what happened to her, but I ended up getting punished. And there really weren't any questions asked. There wasn't any talk that was had. I was just punished. And what that ended up doing was it caused me to have like a very early opinion of sex, which is this is something that gets me in trouble. Apparently, sex is something that's bad. Apparently, sex is something that's so bad that when you're caught doing anything with it or around it, no one even wants to talk to you about it. And what ended up happening was that years down the line, I would find myself in more situations where there would be older people who would put me in like really inappropriate sexual situations, but I didn't feel like I could talk to anybody about it. I didn't think that anybody would care. I didn't think anybody would take me seriously. And, as a matter of fact, with what happened when I was like a really young kid, that ended up being a joke at the dinner table one year, and I was mortified. Like I really didn't feel there was anyone that I can go to or talk to about it because I thought that everyone would look at my experiences as a joke. So stepping into sexuality, I was stepping into it with the mind of a child, and I was looking at it as, oh, this is something that's bad. This is something that's wrong. It's something that gets you in trouble, and then no one will want to talk to you about it afterwards. So as more situations happened later in my life, I just kept it to myself, and I just dealt with it. And by deal with it, what I mean is that I would suppress it. I would just eat, until some of those feelings would go away. Um, I would do the best that I could to just not deal with it, especially when it came to adolescence. And adolescence is a whole can of worms because adolescence was when I realized that I was gay. And I had the words to actually articulate that to myself and to the people at the time who needed to know. And I especially didn't want to talk about the experiences that I had early in life because at around that time, a lot of people were still very ignorant about sexuality and what makes a person gay. Is it nature? Is it nurture? All this type of stuff. And it's different things to different people, but a very popular narrative is that, if you're molested or if something sexually inappropriate happens at a very young age, that's the reason why you're gay. You're broken in some type of way because something like that happened. And I knew that that wasn't true for me. So I was very careful about who I wanted to talk to regarding things like this because I didn't want people to think that there was something any more wrong with me than they already did. So I'm a teenager and I discover that I am gay, right? I realize this. So we already have the first layer of how I understand sexuality as a child. Now, as an adolescent, here's a whole new layer. I was very, very religious as a preteen and as a young teen. Very, very religious. I remember if you're familiar with a band called the Gorillas. I remember I accidentally ended up on their website. And, they poke fun at like religion and things like that. And they had like a little demon as a receptionist at the counter on the landing page of their website. I remember like closing the laptop and immediately going to pray because I was afraid I was going to go to hell just because I was on that website and I saw that. That's how religious I was. So you can only imagine what I was experiencing when it came to my sexuality. So, like, a decision that I had made was, well, I'm just not going to have sex. I'm just not going to do anything with anyone because I can't control the way that I feel, but I can control what I do. So maybe I could still be considered good if I just don't have sex with anyone. Made sense to me. And then, like, another level on top of that was, whoa, maybe if I just wait until I'm married, then it'll be okay. And I'm not even sure if no, it wasn't. Like at that time, gay marriage wasn't even it wasn't a thing yet. Not in all 50 states. They were thinking about it in California, but still seemed like a distant dream. But I was trying to do everything I could to be okay with myself. So I already had this childhood mentality of, well, sexuality is something that's inherently wrong and it's something that gets you in trouble. And then on top of that, I'm very religious. And then I realize that I'm gay. And I'm like, well, shit, I can't do anything about me feeling the way that I feel, but I can control what I do. So let me just lock my sexuality down. But what ended up happening that advanced this even further, because you know how I mentioned that, or I alluded to that what happened with that girl at the babysitters, that wasn't the only thing that happened. More stuff happened, and I just didn't talk to anyone about it. What ended up happening was I was in another situation that just caused me to kind of like snap on the inside. I was in another situation that was again like sexually inappropriate, but I was tired of being a victim. And I actually ended up acting out sexually against the person who victimized me as an attempt to take my power back. And you guys, I felt so guilty. I felt like an absolute monster. And to be real with you, like that was a secret that I thought that I was going to have to take to my deathbed. I didn't think that I was going to have a happy death because I was going to have to take that with me. And I felt that through doing that, even though it was out of retaliation and self defense, I felt like every negative thing that they say about gay people is true. You know, even if it didn't make sense. You know, we all act out sexually. We're child molesters. All we think about is sex. We're weird. We're twisted. I felt like that because I made that mistake, all of that immediately became true about me. Wasn't able to protect myself from that anymore. And that was one of the reasons that I was so driven to become so successful. One of the reasons was because I felt like I needed to make up for that. I needed to prove that part of myself wrong that felt like that I became this creature, this monster, this scum of the earth. And when it came to locking up my sexuality, I really just put it in a box, left it under my bed, and moved to a different house. Like, I was over, I was through, right? So I made it to a point where not only did I feel like other people, not only did I feel that sexuality can get me in trouble, not only did I feel that other people's sex and other people's sexuality was dangerous, but now I feel that way about myself. So I'm like, you know what? It would just be best if I just shut this part of my life down, just cut it out, and just throw it away. And it's really interesting because when I look at like my drag alter ego, Katrina Jackson, I bet there ain't no way in hell people who saw previous performances, they wouldn't think that I was a virgin at 26 years old. But interestingly enough, that's like a part of myself that through drag I'm able to channel like very well. And I think that's the reason why people like her so much is because she's sexy and she nasty. But, you know, really interesting side note about that situation that I just felt so bad about. I actually, because it bothered me for years and years, ate me up for years and years, I actually ended up finding that person, contacted him. We had a sit down conversation about it where I put everything on the table as far as everything that he did and everything that I did in response. And I was very proud of myself because, again, I thought that that was a secret. I thought that was an experience that I was just going to have to take to the grave. But I decided that I didn't want to live like that. And I want to say that it was Maya Angelou who said this, which is, you know, you're only as sick as your secrets. I think there's a lot of truth in that. But I ended up making it to college. So I'm like 18, right? And I'm thinking to myself, okay, you know, I'm grown. I've made it to the point where it's okay to have sex. It's okay to do sexual things. Like up here, I am very understanding and I'm very open. But like everywhere else, I'm still conflicted and I'm still all over the place. But it's like from 18 all the way up to 26. It's so funny because almost every year I'm like, okay, this year is going to be the year. This year is going to be the year where I have sex. This year is going to be the year where I lose my virginity. I remember I was talking I was talking to my older sister about this, and she just had the most creative and out of the box suggestion and like response to this. It was something she saw on TV. She was like, "Well, why don't you have a coming out party?" And I was like, "Well, what is a coming out party? I'm already out. Like, what is it that you mean?" She said, "Well, I saw that there was this girl on TV who gathered all of her friends together and let them know that she was a virgin, but she was ready to have sex. She was ready to explore that aspect of her life. And if there was anybody who could do something about it, if there was anybody who who would want to help, they could." And I'm laughing so much now because in the moment I was really gagged. I was really surprised. But looking back on it, my sister, like on my 18th birthday, took me to Xmart. And Xmart is like in an adult store in North Louisiana. So I'm like, why am I surprised? But I'm actually glad in that aspect she's open, because in that aspect I can be really closed because of my history. But I think about it. I think about it for like this long, but I was like, no, I could never do something like that because of like the image that I had projected of myself. For a long time, I was such the professional, I was such the student leader, but if only I knew about different student leaders and professionals then that I know now, I probably would have changed that tune. But I felt that it was inconsistent with the image that I was projecting. And then on top of that, there was just so much momentum behind me being a virgin, right? And deep down, this is something that bothered me. Still does, if I'm being 100% honest about it. And my mind would do this thing. I think a lot of people's minds do this when it comes to things that we don't like about ourselves or our lives or that bothers us, but we feel like we can't change it. What we'll do is that we'll flip it so that it seems like that's the way that we want. That's the way we want things. That's the way we wanted them all along. Because what I would tell myself is that, oh, you're so virtuous. Oh, you're so pure. You're just waiting for the perfect person. You're going to get someone better because of this. Blah, 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 blah. And then, something else that was really affecting me was internalized homophobia. Because here's the thing. Now, I am a man, right? A male. So there's already this sexualization that happens because I'm a guy, right? People expect men to have a lot of sex and be very sexually free. So there's that. Then on top of that, I'm black. And in the history of the United States, black people are portrayed as very sexual beings in the media and otherwise. There's that expectation. We're fetishized, all of that stuff. So then there's that layer. Then on top of that, I'm gay. So when it comes to the expectations of gay people, people think, oh, well, that's the reason why people are gay, is so they can just have sex indiscriminately all the time. So there's these three layers stacked on top of each other, and I'm just doing the best that I can to just deal with it, right? And I would tell myself, oh, well, you're better because you're not typical. You're not like all the rest of them. And by all the rest of them, it's men, gay black men, black people, hell, any combination of all of that. I would tell myself that I'm just better and I'm just set apart. When really, the whole reason why I hadn't had sex to this point is because there was all kinds of like dysfunction in the background that was holding me back that I hadn't dealt with yet and I hadn't really looked at. So all of that is taking place, right? And I'll have these spurts where I'm like, okay, I feel like I can do something. I feel like I can do something. But then there will be people around me that end up, experiencing deep heartbreak because they had sex with a guy and the guy left them and they thought they meant something to him. Or I've had multiple friends who have, unfortunately caught various STDs. And that really scared me, especially since when I was growing up as a little boy, there was a friend of the family, the only gay man that I knew openly for years and years. He had an HIV diagnosis ever since I was alive. So I'm over here feeling like sex is wrong, sex is bad, sex is unsafe. You gotta watch out for other people. I'm dangerous, they're dangerous. There's just all of these different messages, right? That's coming together at the same time. And I finally made it to the point where I dealt with so much of that stuff. But with where I'm at right now, I'm like, whoa, 26. It's like there's a point in time where being a virgin is expected and it's cute. Then you kind of, and I would say that, you're expected to be a virgin as a child. And it's real cute to be a virgin when you're a teenager. That means that you're keeping your head in them books and you're staying out of them streets and all that kind of stuff. But, once you get into like your early 20s, really late teens, early 20s, that's usually when you throw caution to the wind. And I'm at a place now where I'm like, this is really awkward. Because usually most people have sex consensually when they're teenagers and no one knows what they're doing. Everything and everybody is awkward. So there isn't as much shame and embarrassment around it because everybody's doing it for the first time. But, at 26, I'm like, oh, this really isn't so cute. This isn't really so fun. Like, because on one end, I have all of this book knowledge, right? I'm very caught up to speed and educated when it comes to best practices, how to protect yourself, what to do, what not to do. But we all know that you can't learn how to swim from reading no book. And I'm just afraid of being super awkward. I'm afraid of being like super all over the place. And I'm afraid that I'm just going to humiliate myself, or that there's some norm that I don't understand, or there's some unspoken rule of law that I just don't get. And I end up, not getting it. And I'm just embarrassed and naked and afraid. I, I end up naked and afraid. So, it's so funny because even though I've spent years and years suppressing my sexuality, it's something that'll still come up. It'll sneak up on me sometime. And what I'll do when I'm having like what I'll call like my weak moments, I'll download Grinder, right? I'll download Grinder, and for people who don't know what Grinder is, it's like Tinder, but for gay people. I'll download that, and I'm like, you know what? I could really do something about the way that I'm feeling right now. Because sometimes I feel like I'm about to jump out of my skin because it's like all of the years that I've been holding back, it tries to come through all at once. And I'm like, shit. But then what happens, like when I'm on Grindr and all that type of stuff, I think about it and I'm like, there's a lot of impulsivity that's coming up. You're probably not going to make the very best decisions right now if you try to follow through with this right now. So I calm myself down. I delete the app. And it's so funny. I wonder if any of y'all out there do this. So we have various appetites as human beings, right? The one that we're most well rehearsed with, one we understand the best, know how to address the best, is like an appetite for food, right? But we have emotional appetites, sexual appetites, intellectual appetites, and all that type of stuff. But one thing that I found that I would do is that I would sublimate my sexual appetite by addressing it through my food appetite. So what I'll do is that like I'll feed myself with food instead of feeding myself with sex, and using that as like a stand-in, and like temporarily it'll work. But it's like a double-edged sword, because then, I'm eating more than I should and I feel fat. And when I'm like, you know what? I think I may be open. I think I may be ready to have sex. Then I feel like a fat ass, and I feel like, well, I look good in my clothes, but if I take them off in front of somebody, I'm gonna look like a monster, and I'm gonna scare them away. And this isn't me body shaming anybody else, but I prefer the way that I look when I am thinner and when I am smaller. That's when I feel more confident in myself, and that's when I feel ready. But just going through all of that, I'm like, let me not follow through on any of this. And it's interesting because I'm at a place where what I want, like ideally, what I want is that I would just have a sit down conversation with someone that I just really trust, someone I really respect and really admire, and be like, look, this is a very non traditional, unorthodox request, but this is what I want you to do for me. Can you do it? And to be honest with you, like in the past, I actually did sit down and talk to a friend about this, and I was like, hey, I trust you to help me with this. Can you help me? And y'all, like, oh my goodness, I didn't intend to, but I offended him. He was so offended because I was like so confident and I was so sure. And I had already thought about it, and I thought that this was such a good idea because I'm like, well, this is a person who really loves and respects me. I love and respect him too, but he had his own hang-ups about sexuality. It's like when it came to what I experienced, because usually when you experience sexually distressing things early in your childhood, instead of your pendulum being at a resting mode where it's balanced and your sexuality is balanced, it goes to either extreme. Either it'll go towards the extreme where I was, where you shut your sexuality down, or it goes to the other extreme where my friend was, where he's very active sexually. And I was like, well, hell, we could help each other, but didn't work out that way. But I'm at a point where even when my sex drive sneaks up on me and it's like, get somebody, get anybody, even though that happens, what I really want is to experience my first time having sex with someone who I care about and who I respect, and who I know that they care about me and they respect me too. I used to want to wait until marriage, right? And then I was like, nah, I can just wait until I'm in a relationship. If I'm in a relationship, I'll feel safe. I'll feel like it's okay. If mistakes happen, it could just be laughed off. But now I'm at the point where I'm like, I really just want to be someone that essentially I can live with, where it's mutual respect, love, and appreciation. And I was talking to a friend of mine about this, and he was like, well, especially with these guys nowadays in our community, it's not going to work like that. You have to have sex with them first before they care about you, before they want anything to do with you. And that's a very popular opinion, but you guys, this is what I think, and this is what I believe. Especially when people say things like this to me, and they say things like this really about themselves. I'm like, there was a man that walked on the moon. You're able to talk to a person on the other side of the world instantly. We're able to fly in the sky, and we are able to take the organs out of one person, living or dead, and put them into somebody else and prolong their life. And you trying to tell me that a guy being interested in me before sex is impossible? Honey, I'm not Brandy. You're not Whitney Houston. You ain't gonna tell me what's possible and what's impossible with all of these amazing things that's happening in the world. Right? Are you with me? Do you agree? All y'all that's out there. But I think I'm essentially finished talking about this. I just wanted to put that out there to really share this because it's something that happens, but people don't really talk about it. Um, it's so popular to be a hoe, and sometimes I get so jealous of hoes. Like it looks, it's so popular. It seems so glamorous. It seems so exciting, especially. Now, all my friends ain't hoes, but sometimes they'll talk about how they went and got something, right? They'll talk about how they went and they got some dick. And I, just because of where my mind is at, when I think about someone, you know, getting some dick, giving or receiving some dick, it's the word some. I always imagine that it's like a Kit Kat bar and you can just break off a piece, or it's like you know, a a terrible shareable like king size Hershey. And you know how like with Hershey's bars, like they're perforated, you can just break a piece off and you can hand it to somebody if you wanted to. That's what I always imagine. It's always like this high fantasy cartoon version of what they're talking about. And honestly, me being a virgin and my friends not has impacted some of my friendships because they feel like they can't talk to me about certain things, and they feel like there's been some that have felt like I was judging them, um, because I didn't have a whole lot of sexual experience, and that did get in the way of like intimacy as far as like how close friends can get because they didn't feel that they could share everything with me. And sex is a large part of being a fully realized adult if you're not asexual. But y'all, that's all I have to say. Whenever I sit down with my clients, like I always tell them that if you want to heal, if you want to change, you have to tell the truth. You have to get intimate. You have to become vulnerable because that's the only way anything can heal is by you opening it up, right? So I like to be a role model for that. I like to practice and to exercise openness because it's not just good for me, but it's good for the people who are listening too. Oh, and yes, I'm going to talk about this. I'm still doing my emancipation sessions, my emancipation consultations. If you're wondering what they're like, they're very much like this. I'm not going to judge you. We can just talk. And I can see if I can help you on like a really, really, really deep level, but you're going to get something out of the consultation. That much I can guarantee. Essentially, I help people whose lives look really good on the outside, but they're like miserable on the inside because they've had experiences like me where they have to uphold a certain image, but they can't talk about the things that are truly bothering them. Girl, set up a consultation with me. I'll put a link inside of here after I put things down, after I turn off this video. But yes, I'll see all of you later. I'm about to go through all of these comments. I'm going to respond to them all, and I'm going to post a link to where you can schedule a consultation with me if you like to. So thank you all for tuning in. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you all later. I hope you don't see me differently. Oh my God. Bye. Good night.